Quick note before we start, this one covers addiction and early sobriety triggers, some medical testing, family estrangement, and financial strain during a divorce. If any of that isn't for you today, take care of yourself and come back for the next one. There's a thing in early sobriety called the pink cloud. It's a temporary phase of intense euphoria, extreme optimism, and heightened joy. The kind of thing people in recovery communities like AA started naming decades ago because so many people go through it. It needed a name. Some people call it the honeymoon stage of quitting. Here's the science of it, as best as I understand it. Active addiction hijacks the brain's whole reward system. When the substance use finally stops, there's a sudden neurochemical surge. Dopamine levels and serotonin receptors slowly starting to heal and rebalance themselves. The mental noise disappears, the self-loathing quiets down, the physical hangovers stop, the daily chaos evaporates, and what's left behind is this massive wave of natural relief. It usually kicks in a few days or weeks into sobriety, right after the physical misery of withdrawal finally fades, and it's temporary. Depending on your own brain chemistry and how long you've been using, it can last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. I was only a couple weeks into mine when my first real test got sprung on me. This is the pink cloud. It was my daughter's evening soccer game. October was winding down and it was fucking cold outside. I remember that specifically because there was a constant thin drip running from the end of my damaged nose the whole night. The cracks had healed into scars by then. I could actually breathe again. Mostly. My nasal cavity was still a little blocked, but it was better than it had been. Courtney was sitting up high in her usual perch in one of those low-slung lawn chairs, creating a natural divide between me and the kids, without ever having to say a word about it. It was awkward every single time I saw them, and it hurt every single time too. Conversations felt stunted. They always seemed eager to leave the second we finished catching up, like my physical presence created some kind of pain for them. It did. I knew it did. I was still emotionally wrecked, and despite carrying on a whole relationship with Scarlett at the same time, some part of me still thought Courtney and I would eventually find our way back to each other. I held on to that hope longer than I probably should have, so I played nice. Henry had decided to skip the game entirely that night, so it was just me and Courtney. I mentioned how cold it had gotten, said something about not looking forward to sleeping in the caravan that night. She brushed it off, said I was probably looking forward to getting into my new place instead, which I was. I just hadn't gotten confirmation yet. I'd been playing an actual game of hide and seek with the property manager, still under review by the housing board or whatever bureaucratic body it actually was, and apparently they were off on Fridays, which meant I'd be waiting the entire weekend just to find out if I'd been approved or not. There wasn't much to actually move in the end. No real need to book a moving van. Everything I owned fit into a dozen or so of those black storage containers with the yellow lids that you get from Home Depot. The ones that Courtney had left out for me back when she changed all the locks on the house while I was in Ohio and installed security cameras around the whole property and a doorbell cam. to make absolutely sure I'd never walk back through the front door again. Nothing especially practical in those bins. A juicer, some leftover wooden pieces I built earlier, back when I still had my workshop. I sold off all of that equipment for about a third of what it was worth and converted the garage into a wrestling and workout room instead. I got some jiu-jitsu mats direct from the Fuji distributor. Picked up the rest secondhand from a friend trying to unload his old gym setup, a bench, a set of Olympic weights. That had all been set up right before I first pushed off for Bermuda, back when sobriety was supposed to be the whole plan. The plan hadn't aged particularly well. It fizzled the moment I left, and the basement quietly turned into a catch-all: old couches, camera equipment, lighting rigs and tripods, a lonely boom arm, the physical remnants of a life that had gotten interrupted and rerouted somewhere else entirely. A dad from one of the new players came up to me right after I arrived. Excuse me. Courtney had already... Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. Holding. Got a dry throat. I'll take that from the top. A dad from one of the new players came up right after I arrived. Courtney had already claimed her chair by then. His daughter was awful on the field, genuinely fearful of the ball, and he clearly wasn't, and his method for working his way into the local soccer dad social circle was offering around little nips from a very expensive bottle of scotch. Just enough to keep the cold off, he said. I had to decline. It had been a few weeks by then that I had been into rehab, and I hadn't had any real cravings yet. This was the first real test. And if I'm honest with you, some part of me wanted to take that swig, wanted to release some of the tension sitting in my shoulders, wanted something to help me navigate the general awkwardness of the whole evening. But I said no. He looked offended, shocked even. It seemed to dawn on him right there that maybe carrying a bottle of scotch around a girl's intramural soccer game wasn't the most appropriate move to begin with. I didn't do much to put him at ease about it either. I just sank into my chair and dug in for a long, cold evening. The girls lost, like they always did. The team was genuinely, thoroughly bad, and we lived in a part of the country where participation trophies got held in going again. And we lived in part of the country where participation trophies got held in can't say it. Going again. We lived in part of a country... Brain fart. And we lived in part of a... and we lived in a part of the country where participation trophies got held in far higher regard than actually winning anything. It rubbed most of the parents the wrong way. It definitely rubbed me the wrong way. There's just a bad feeling that comes with constantly being on the losing end of things. Bad for the kid's self-esteem, bad for mine too, honestly. I'd already given up on trying to define myself through youth sports by that point. Going again. I'd already given up trying to define myself through youth sports by that point. One more time. I'd already given up trying to define myself through youth sports by that point. Given up on trying to be anybody's coach. I had coached Henry once in flag football, but I quit that entirely after a drive home from Philly, right after he just joined an all-black team called the Jaguars out of East Orange. I was tearing into him about a missed block from the driver's seat, and when I glanced up into the rearview mirror, I caught him crying in the back. That was the last time I ever tore into him about anything sports-related. He was a wrestler, too, and we'd had our own version of the same shouting match, me lying flat on the mat's edge, screaming instructions at him while he was pinned under an opponent, trying to talk him out of a bad position just a few feet away. Look, wrestling is hard enough on its own. There's nothing worse about the sport than the silent car ride home, listening to your own dad wax poetic about exactly how you screwed up your double leg and lost the match. I decided I wasn't going to be that dad. I wasn't going to use my own son as some kind of proxy to work out my own failures as a youth athlete. The game ended with a strange, feigned little hug from Ellie, my daughter, a hug performed more out of obligation than warmth. While we caught up for a minute about what my days actually looked like at rehab, I wanted so badly to share the little bit of success with my ex-wife, my daughter, and my son. Neither of them were particularly interested. Who could really blame them? I did get into the Parkway Lofts despite all my fussing and worrying about it, which reminds me, what the fuck was the point of all that worrying about anyway? I was either gonna get approved or I wasn't, and no matter what amount of stressing over it was going to change the outcome either way. What a useless way to spend your energy, honestly. There wasn't much to actually move once the official go-ahead finally came through, but I waited another full day before making the move happen. Maybe some part of me wanted to go back to that old house one more time. But I already knew that door was closed. I sent Courtney a text. Are you sure you want this? I'm not coming back if I pull this trigger. This is final. She didn't write back. Damn it. So many bad memories tied up in that silence, and if I'm honest, I didn't actually want to leave the caravan either. As much as I hated admitting that to myself, I'm not entirely sure what the right metaphor even is for it, but I wasn't ready for it yet. I wanted to stay a little longer inside that cocoon. It made me feel safe. Maybe because I could see every single thing I had to manage laid out right in front of me. No surprises. There was something about the sheer simplicity of it that appealed to me. I hadn't looked into bankruptcy yet, but I'd already put a pause on my student loans, stopped paying the credit cards, not entirely, but the select few that I still had to pay. Now that I finally had this place, my credit was probably about to turn to complete shit. Fuck it, I figured. Then ping, oh shit, Courtney had written me back. For one brief, ridiculous second, I actually thought she'd come to her fucking senses. That she was asking me to forget about the whole thing, that she couldn't live without me, that what had she been thinking? It was a mistake, that she loved me. She could never actually leave me broke, busted, and broken. Hey, I need your signature for this HELOC thing. Huh? HELOC thing? What the fuck is a HELOC? She hadn't even bothered acknowledging what I'd written about moving into my own place. Fuck her, I decided. I'd ignore her too. I threw the phone down onto the seat and picked it right back up and looked up what HELOC actually was. A loan, a refinance. Oh shit, she was about to screw me over. I could feel it coming. She was going to try something with the house. I texted her back immediately. Hey, what's the deal? I'm on the train. Let me circle back once I get to the city, and I'll unpack everything. Since the separation, this had become about the entire range of our communication. She talked to me like I was an employee of hers, a subordinate. I was completely out of my depth with bills, HELOCs, mortgages, refinancing. I was an artist, after all. I'd never once made real time for any of that. Courtney had always handled every bit of it. I was told there would be no math. This would come back to bite me eventually, in nearly every conceivable way across every single facet of my new financial reality, one I'd flat out neglected for years. Courtney had neglected some of it too, in fairness, but she'd carried all that stress of it for both of us, while it just ran off my back like water off a duck. Shit, I was going to be late for rehab. It was another quiet reason I kept overstaying my welcome in the caravan. The commute from my new place off the Garden State Parkway was going to tack on an extra 25 minutes every single fucking morning. Fuck, man. I didn't want to do any of this anymore. And this was only the very beginning of an entirely new life. I got my blood results back. Turns out I didn't have AIDS. Thank God. That was good news. No HIV either. No sexually transmitted diseases of any kind. Nothing incurable, at least. My liver enzymes came back completely unaffected, actually in very good shape. That surprised me. I hadn't destroyed my body in the way I assumed I had after years and years of abuse. I guess my little life hacks along the way, the diets, the weight cuts for jiu-jitsu, the stretches of temporary sobriety, had actually done some real good for my overall health, even while everything else was falling apart around me. That was great news. I was headed into week 3 of rehab, and honestly, I felt great. I'd still get the occasional cocaine dream, searching some drawer or hidden spot, the baggie tearing, some golf ball-sized rocks of cocaine showing up in the most impractical places imaginable, hiding it from Courtney, hiding it from the kids, from my counselors, all in the dream, but I never actually got to indulge in any of it, not once, not even in the dream. Shit, at least in a wet dream you get to enjoy some part of it. No dice with cocaine. The brain, the body connection just refused to let me have it, even in my fantasy. I'd bring this up with my assigned counselor, Jeremy, a young guy, a little effeminate, and I made him laugh constantly. I have this strange, disarming ability. I say things most people in a room won't say out loud, and it's usually pretty accurate. A bullseye more often than not. I've never fully known where that particular gift came from, or if it's even a fucking gift, but it's followed me through most of my life. I'm inappropriate too, honestly, and I think that ends up compelling people towards me, counselors especially. I closed the distance between myself and strangers very fast. Jeremy and I got close quickly. Not because I was manipulating him, I genuinely like getting to know people authentically, without the masks, without the performances. Even trapped inside our little assigned roles, counselor and counseled, we were still just two people underneath all of that pretext, and we were both sober, in recovery. We were alcoholics, we were addicts. We'd meet every day between the morning meeting and the afternoon session. Drug testing always fell on Fridays. I'd been tested twice by then. My first one came back dirty, though we already know exactly how that one was going to go. Nobody knew in advance when they were going to get tested. There was no schedule. It kept everyone honest, kept everybody a little on their toes. And if you weren't being duplicitous, which I wasn't at that point, the shakedown always turned out fine. Like any test, of course, there are always ways around it, ways to cheat the system if you really wanted to. I hadn't needed to yet, and I just filed that fact away quietly for later. For the time being, I just needed some sleep. I'd been connected with an attorney by then, not much to discuss yet, just endless streams of paperwork. Who owned what our combined worth actually was, back tax filings, debt. She explained that my reduced hours at work were ironically actually a good thing. It would lower my child support obligation. It had come down to that. 20 years, marriage, 2 kids. And me being reduced in my hourly wages was going to reduce what I had to pay out for my own kids. Courtney received around $5,000 every month from a wealthy aunt, meant to offset her side of taxes. I wouldn't be going after any of that. It was hers. I had no real claim or access to it, even though I'd grown fairly accustomed to that money landing in our shared account for the last couple years. The future didn't look especially bright from where I was sitting. I was going to have to live lean, tighten the proverbial belt, and learn to live like a monk for the next few years until I could get back on my feet again. It was going to be all about the essential, reducing the superfluous, embracing actual simplicity. I'd overconsumed the better part of a decade. It was finally time to do the opposite. Some nights ran long. I didn't want to leave the camper, even with the new place waiting for me. But life keeps moving on, regardless of whether you're actually willing to move with it. John Lennon's famous for saying, "Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans." I was going to have to get up early, hit rehab, and start moving things over piece by piece, order a bed, a couch, a TV. I was going to have to start over completely from scratch, and that was okay. There's something liberating about losing everything. The pink cloud doesn't last, though. I knew that even while I was inside it. But for those few weeks, it gave me something I hadn't had in years. Enough clarity to say no to a bottle of scotch at a soccer game. Enough distance to actually laugh at my own useless worrying. Enough hope to believe that starting over from a dozen plastic bins might actually turn into something real, something worthwhile. Next time, what happens when the cloud starts to thin and the real work underneath it finally has to begin? Boom. Alrighty, that's episode 13. I'll edit that probably tomorrow and it'll be up on the internets. Have a good night.